The New York Times, though, has stated that Jeffrey Epstein did not grow his power and wealth via ties to intelligence. Jank, just that's all you get. What's your 2 cents?
No, guys, this is an enormous story. So, as Drop Site News put it, Jeffrey Epstein appears to be the Forrest Gump of all political scandals and intelligence agency maneuvers. But I'm sure it's all a giant coincidence. It's not. If you watch this story, you'll see Epstein definitely involved with intelligence. Which intelligence? You're going to find that out too.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to deny after all of this. So on Tuesday, the New York Times published a massive piece on Jeffrey Epstein. And in it, it argues abundant conspiracy theories hold that Epstein worked for spy services or ran a lucrative blackmail operation. But we found a more prosaic explanation for how he built a fortune. But thanks to new reporting from Drop Site News, we've learned about Epstein's actual connections to an American intelligence scandal, the Iran-Contra affair. So specifically, Epstein, he shared a penthouse with an Iran-Contra lawyer, and he worked for an Iran-Contra arms dealer, and he moved the Iran-Contra planes to Ohio for use by billionaire retail mogul Leslie Wexner. So this piece is incredibly detailed. It is so long and we don't have time to go through all of it, but if you are so interested, I would really encourage a lot of you to go find the article and read it for yourselves. It is hefty. But for now, here are some of the major takeaways that we'll give you. We'll start with a man named Stanley Pottinger. In the early 1980s, under the CIA supervision, Pottinger advised an Iranian banker on shipping embargoed arms to Iran using fraudulent paperwork and overseas dummy companies in the very same period that Pottinger and Epstein worked together selling tax avoidance strategies from a penthouse by Central Park. So the CIA would later use the profits from that scheme to bankroll the Contras down in Nicaragua. And on one occasion, the CIA met with that Iranian banker in Pottinger's office. And again, this is all during the time that Pottinger and Epstein were renting a penthouse together. So that Iranian banker was later indicted, but a money launderer and weapons trafficker named Adnan Khashoggi became America's next conduit to Iran. In 1985, Khashoggi teamed up with the CIA and then Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres, who helped Israel sell its own weapons to Iran while the US promised to refill those weapon stores. At this time, future Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak was head of Israel's military intelligence directorate. So it says former Israeli intelligence officer Ari Ben-Menash wrote in his 1992 memoir that Ehud Barak feared Peres or the Americans would discover the slush fund bank accounts where the arms profits were hidden and take the money for themselves. Ben-Menash claimed that Barak arranged for media mogul Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, to launder the Iran weapons profits through his company's accounts. Epstein often made vague boasts about being a financial bounty hunter who tracked down hidden money. Well, in 1987, while Robert Maxwell was allegedly hiding money from arms deals, Epstein bragged to a journalist about finding money for Adnan Khashoggi in such detail, the journalist thought Epstein might be in the business of hiding as well as finding it. So as the 80s went on, the Iran-Contra scheme fell apart, it blew up in the press, and as the years passed, Epstein was handed control of billionaire fashion mogul Leslie Wexner's finances. So eventually, Wexner's empire gobbled up Southern Air Transport, or SAT, which controlled the very same planes that the CIA used to send weapons to Iran. So with Epstein acting as Wexner's logistics man in Ohio in 1996, SAT finished relocating its world headquarters to Columbus to deliver products from factories in Hong Kong and southern China directly to Wexner's network of limited brand stores. And on October 1st, 1998, SAT abruptly filed for bankruptcy exactly 1 week before the CIA Inspector General released its official findings on Contra cocaine trafficking allegations. Oh my God, that was so hefty. That's so much. And it really doesn't even scratch the surface of everything that was detailed in that article. Again, you should read both. Read the New York Times piece and then read what DropSite revealed, all within this 1 week. I think I looked at it, Jank, in the New York Times piece, they only mention Israel one or 3 times. And it's just like, oh, Epstein was in Israel visiting these people and they weren't impressed with him. So it's really crazy. And the New York Times piece, the way that they try to frame it is that, oh, there's all these conspiracy theories around Epstein and like, does he work for Mossad? Like, was he a Mossad agent? Was he working with the CIA? All these things are very conspiratorial, according to the New York Times, which actually a viewer just pointed out, they might have some, it's really not saying much to say, but they might have some compromise. There might be compromise a little bit there. But with the New York Times piece, it was very much they were attempting to take a pragmatic approach. Like, you know what? It doesn't have to be so conspiratorial. Oftentimes, the simpler explanation is the right one. It has nothing to do with intelligence. This is all about, he was just really good at networking. But who was he networking with? And why was he involved? He said he was like Forrest Gump. He really does just pop up everywhere. And the idea that he's popping up now in relation to Iran-Contra is unbelievable. This is a big story.
Yeah, no. You only read the New York Times piece if you want to see how mainstream media covers up for the government, intelligence agencies, etc. Basically, it's a piece saying nothing to see here. Perfectly normal how he got all of his connections and money. Nonsense. DropSite News doing real journalism shows you, no, this guy was in the middle of a deal between the CIA, Israeli intelligence, and the Iranians. There are no random Forrest Gump dudes who walk into the middle of an Iran-Contra deal between the CIA, the Israelis, and Iran. That's not a thing that happens. You'd have to be a borderline lunatic to think that that happens. He's arranging where the illegal planes go. Epstein is. He's arranging meetings between Israeli intelligence and US, etc. There's no question he's intelligence. None, zero. And so at this point, the New York Times and all the other media they see the DropSite News stories. Like if they could disprove them, do you know how badly they want to disprove them? Because DropSite News is humiliating them by being real journalists, while the New York Times is like, it's Trump, it's Bill Clinton, nothing to look at here. Don't look at Israel, don't look at the CIA. No, we're gonna look at him, because what the hell's he doing in the middle of that deal? Guys, it's even worse than that in a sense. You always had this sense of like, there are powerful people that you don't see. I ran this clip from President John F. Kennedy a couple of weeks before he was assassinated, talking about groups of secret people that conspire against the government, against all of us, etc. It's a haunting speech by JFK, assassinated a couple of weeks later. And so Adnan Khashoggi is the uncle of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post columnist who was murdered by the Saudis. Okay, Hashemi is some guy who helped arrange the Iran part of the Iran-Contra controversy. He winds up being injected with something and dying of leukemia 2 days later. People keep popping up dead all over these stories, okay? So are there a group of people doing illicit deals like this? Well, of course there are. Iran-Contra, that was an illicit deal. We were not supposed to fund the Contras, and we certainly weren't supposed to sell weapons to a government we were calling terrorists at the time. Reagan was saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Meanwhile, CIA and Jeffrey Epstein and the Israelis are helping Iran get those weapons. And then, of course, many years later, Israel then turns around and says, can you believe Iran has weapons? We have to attack them. So the only thing I couldn't see definitively out of this story is Epstein Mossad or CIA or both? I don't know, but it's definitely one of them, if not both of them. So anyone claiming he's not intelligence, honestly, most of them probably have not read the DropSite all stories. If you haven't and you just don't know, no problem, right? But if you read that and you still claim that Epstein wasn't involved in intelligence, you're lying And then I have to wonder why you're lying, because that's a completely irrational and indefensible conclusion that you would come to after seeing Epstein in the middle of all of these deals. By the way, almost every single, I say almost because I'm not positive, but it's not almost in the ones that I've seen. Every single story that I've seen him do some sort of interacting with different countries, doing deals, setting up meetings, were all on behalf of Israel.
It's really impressive how prolific he managed to be, from where he started to where he ended up to where he's organizing all kinds of meetings with world leaders, how he has targeted every celebrity, anyone literally of any kind of note and significance and relevance to any position of power, right? Whether that's in entertainment or business or in government, he was everywhere. And for the New York Times to publish that piece, and like they said it like it was this big bombshell reporting. They spent so much time and money on it. They had their best reporters on it. They dug through everything. And then that's what they ended up publishing. It's really kind of appalling. And then for DropSite to come out immediately and be like, how'd you miss all this? Like obviously they were leaving out a lot of things in this bombshell piece that they wanted to deliver to the American people. It's really unbelievable. And all of this is happening the same week that we're supposed to get the Epstein files. This feels much, much, much more significant, much bigger than anything that we got from our government, because all we got was a few pictures of Michael Jackson and Bill Clinton that I would have rather not seen.
Yeah,
if that's what they had to give us, I would have just said, no, thank you. That would have been better.
The last two things here. One, we'll put the link in the description box for the DropSite news story so you can read it yourself. And two, one of our members just wrote in on tyt.com, put that away and wrote in, I predict Maxwell will be taking a ride on Adelson jet very soon. So why? Because Robert Maxwell is involved in these stories. Robert Maxwell is Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. And Robert Maxwell is the most legendary Mossad spy of all time. He's the one that stole our nuclear secrets. By the way, I mean, I'm never gonna stop saying this because I find it to be the most remarkable thing I've ever heard. He stole our nuclear secrets and we decided not to arrest him because it would be an international incident that would embarrass the Israelis. Yeah, if you steal our nuclear secrets, embarrass is the least you should be. So our government protecting Israel at every turn, in the most outrageous ways, whether they're doing a deal with us in Iran-Contra. Now that I get why they're protecting, CIA protects them because they were involved in that complicit plan, in that illicit plan. But by the way, that plan was illegal, and the people who did it at the CIA should have been arrested, let alone the Israelis and the Iranians. Okay. But also in deals that, in situations where it massively hurts us. I'm trying to prevent people from getting nukes is one of the most important things that we do, because the more countries that have nukes, the more unstable the world becomes, and the greater the danger for all of us. Israel steals that from us, and we're like, thank you, sir, may we have another. And we've given them over $300 billion for no reason at all. All they ever do is spy and steal, and it looks like either Mossad or CIA or both unleashed this plague of Jeffrey Epstein upon us, and they did it knowing that they were going to molest and rape underage American girls here for their intelligence benefit. Nah, our government doesn't represent us at all. We need somebody to represent us desperately to get our government back.
And just one quick thing before we break. Yeah, Trump just gave that insane address to the American people on Wednesday where he yelled at us for 20 minutes. It was very bizarre. But in that speech, he said, look at all these things that I've done for Israel. And he said, look, I had to write it down. I had to take notes on it because I've done so much for Israel. Read the room. No, the American people on both sides of the aisle wildly oppose American involvement in Israel. At this point, though, like, how do we even detangle ourselves from them? The US and Israel, we are the same. We are their arm. We are their muscle. They're the little guy. We're the big guy with the muscles. They're the, It's a whole thing, and Trump and the Republicans are still pushing this narrative that we need to support Israel and look at all these things. He's the America First president. The people voted for him because he was the America First president, and he said that. That's how he branded himself. And yet here he is doing the thing that even his own supporters would rather him not do. And then everything coming out now with the Epstein files. Epstein is another issue that Trump voters feel very, very passionate about, or at least they did. I think they've kind of like mellowed out a little bit on that because of, just the way everything has been handled. But, these two issues coming together, the way that they're coming together is very strange. And it's really not being reported on very much or very widely, especially not in the mainstream media. And we can see that very clearly with the piece, the differences between the two pieces that have come out this week.
Yeah, I got to say one last thing because a member on Twitch wrote in, Dev0094 said, "Yep, it's all a coincidence. Procuring cyber weapons for Israel, coincidence. Setting up meetings for a former Israeli prime minister with Putin, that's just a coincidence too." And we could list 10, 12 more coincidences. Guys, this is why I get so frustrated with the media. So the government is obviously somehow complicit in this. That's why they desperately covered it up under Republican and Democratic administrations. But the media has no excuse. Breaking a story about how the CIA was involved with Epstein as an example would be spectacular. It would be the biggest story that's ever happened. Breaking a story about how, if it was Mossad, same thing. But whenever it gets to Mossad or Israel, the press, unanimously, I don't mean independent press like Lever, Dropsite News, Guardian, Us, etc. I mean traditional media are unified in not covering this angle. That is bizarre. It's the weirdest thing I have ever seen. So what is going inside these news organizations where they're like, oh, it's super obvious that Epstein was working with Israel somehow? Obviously. There's like a million connections. They're like, nope, won't cover it, won't cover it, won't cover it. Okay, well then you guys are useless. You're not journalists. In fact, your job is to cover up the news, not to reveal the news. If you're not covering this, the biggest story, one of the biggest stories of our lifetimes, and you're not connecting that dot, no, you guys are the worst. They're anti-news, anti-news. Their job is to do marketing for the most corrupt people in our governments and to make sure the American people never find out the real news. Epstein was definitely connected to Israel. The prime minister is sitting at his place 30 different times. Israeli spies are coming in and out of his building. He's trying to get building his house. He's trying to get us to bomb Syria. He's trying to get America to bomb Iran. In the emails, he's constantly talking about what else can we do to help Israel? What else can we do to help Israel? I'm trying to help Israel. Israel, Israel, Israel. Oh, here's the Israeli spy. Here's the Israeli prime minister. And getting cyber weapons for Israel. How is this complicated? So, okay, I guess every national media reporter that works for these, now I'm going to start calling corrupt traditional media, has decided to bury the most relevant part of this story on behalf of a foreign government. And how that works, I don't know. If you told me before, like that a memo was passed around and they get together and decide not to cover this, I would have said that's crazy. No way they do that. But they're all doing it at the same time. Now I'm wondering, like, are they literally in on it? And if you don't know the history of these traditional media outlets, have they worked with the CIA before? Yes, that is very well documented. New York Times, Time Magazine, all of these traditional media outlets, the CIA would often feed them propaganda before we would do coup against the government. It was part of the coup that these papers would smear anyone representing their own people so the CIA could get rid of them. Are they still having that role? I don't know. Because the more they cover this up, and every day that the New York Times, Washington Post, ABC, CNN, all these guys cover up this story, is another day we begin to wonder who the hell are they working for? And has our entire news operation in this country been all about propaganda to deceive you all your entire lives, to paint a picture that isn't real at all? So yeah, that's how far this goes. because there's no question that that now Epstein's part of intelligence, and almost every major media outlet is lying to you and covering that up.
Mhm. Yeah, and at some point, it has to be acceptable, even the right patriotic thing to do, to question your journalists, right? Now you have freedom of press, and they're clearly not reporting on a story the way they should be, and it's inexcusable at this point, right? There's so much evidence, and they're not even mentioning it, and so many people in this country are still watching, getting the majority of their news from those major cable stations. And so they really are just not hearing about a lot of the things that, we talk about on this show and other shows like ours are discussing. So I do like that we're talking about it, at least. I like that our audience is informed. I like that they're engaged in all of this. And I just wish we could expand that a little bit, or, tell your friends, like ask them, like, have you heard about this? It's so bizarre to me how all these things are still happening, and people who think that they're informed with the news are so ill-informed, or they're just missing entire pieces of the narrative. And I don't think that they want to be ill-informed. I think the people who are actively watching these shows want to know about what's actually going on, and they don't realize that they're just not getting the whole story. So this is a moment for journalism.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.